with us?
Yes.
All
Can
right.
you hear me?
Thank you. Yes, we can. Well, we'll take a breath and we'll go now to the Mon County Commission Candidate Forum for 2022.
Where's
Autumn,
Bob?
Autumn, there we go. This forum is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Morgantown-Monongalia County, Morgantown, Kingwood NAACP, and the Community Coalition for Social Justice. And I don't think we need to go through the registration and early voting again, because I have a feeling most people have stayed on from the previous forum. So let's just move past those slides and get to the meat of the program. The candidates that were invited to participate in tonight's forum are Mr. Beach, Mr. Hartzog, and Mr. Sikora. And I see that we have Mr. Sikora and Mr. Hartzog with us. Mr. Beach is not in. He may be dialing in, but we will go ahead and start our questions without him. The format for tonight is that each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce himself. We'll have a series of questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer. And then closing statements will be 1 to 2 minutes, depending on what our time looks like at the end. So let's start with Mr. Hartzog. To introduce yourself, please. You have 2 minutes, and you've been seeing the 30-second and 15-second in red warnings, so please take it off.
Well, my name is, as many of you all know, Charles David Hartzog. I was born in Troy, Alabama, to which I was raised in my early life in Eufaula, Alabama. And then I lived in Athens, Ohio, for about 9.5 years. Actually, I lived about down the road from Joe Burrow, if anybody knows him. His parents are still there. I also know, I've also lived in Parkersburg, West Virginia, where I graduated high school. And now I go to WVU here in Morgantown. I've actually, well, there's a lot of things really. Yeah, there's actually a lot of things about my life that is just too little time and too much to get into. And yeah, I've actually got a lot of detailed background really, including, well, personal interest, and not to mention I'm a 10th generation American, been here since 1752. Yeah, but my ancestors fought in the American Revolution and the Civil War, and yeah, it's my side of the story. Though as an economics major, and of course the law and the 3+3 program, which is in for a law degree, and I've a major interest in history, a secondary interest in math and English, and as far as politics go, I think all 3 of those could be utilized. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. And now, Mr. Sikora, tell us about yourself, please.
Good evening. First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for holding this forum and all that you do to further voter information for the citizens of our county. You're providing a valuable service, and it's important that our voters get the chance to see the candidates together and to compare and contrast their qualifications. So I'd also like to thank my fellow Republican candidate, Charles Hartzog. I hope my Democratic candidate, Bob Beach, joins, because again, I think it's important. If it's important enough to run for this position, I think it's just like showing up for work. You ought to show up for whenever they have these forums so that people can make informed decisions. As I indicated, as you indicated, my name's Sean Sikora, but that's S-E-A-N. And I'm your current county commissioner. So that's in regards to my credentials to serve as commissioner. I currently represent the Central Magisterial District of Monongalia County. I'm a resident of the city of Morgantown, living in the city's 7th Ward, along with my wife, Jackie, and my 2 wonderful girls. Becca, who is currently a junior studying physics at West Virginia Wesleyan College under the biomedical engineering program, and my youngest, Gwen, who's an honor student as a sophomore at Morgantown High, who plays in the red and blue band and is also a member of the MHS girls lacrosse team. As far as my credentials to be county commissioner, as I mentioned, I'm current county commissioner, having been elected in 2016. In my private sector professional career, I have a 28-year career supporting the National Energy Technology Laboratory as a contractor. I've served the lab in every position from warehouse support all the way up the ladder to management, and then serving in the capacity of program manager, business manager, contracts manager, and project manager. In my educational career, I hold a Bachelor of Arts degree and an MBA from West Virginia University, both degrees I obtained while holding down a full-time job. I'm also a project management professional. I hold that certification from the Project Management Institute, which is the gold standard for project managers. In addition, I also hold a certified professional contract manager certification, which is the gold standard for contract managers. And I want to thank you, and I'm really interested in having this conversation and the whole election process. So I do sincerely thank the League of Women Voters for everything you do, and the public for participating.
Thank you very much. We'll start now with our questions, and what we will do is we will alternate between Mr. Sikora and Mr. Hartzog. And Mr. Sikora, we'll ask you to start on this one. What do you consider to be the most significant challenges for Mon County over the next 10 years?
Well, I think the most significant challenge for Monongalia County is managing growth in a responsive, collaborative, and comprehensive manner. I realize a lot of our problems are infrastructure, and we have to rely on the state. Monongalia County has good problems when it comes to our growth, but problems nonetheless. When it comes to the state focusing on our needs, we always come across as whining, but we, along with our elected state representatives, need to hold Charleston accountable for our share of the funding for roads. In the last BEA numbers for 2020, Monongalia County contributes 8.51% of the total GDP for the whole state. We need to ensure that we get our share. I think we've been a fair partner to the state in coming to the table with not only problems, but solutions to those problems. I think we've done that with Exit 153, where we paid back the state for that interchange in only 4 years. And we are working with them to do the same thing with Exit 150, which is the Harmony Grove interchange. In regards to managing growth, I do think that we need to have a long public discussion about some sort of land use and subdivision regs to ensure that we are having responsible development. In addition, though, we are the envy of the state when it comes to economic development. We do need to deal with affordable housing. We have to deal with the homeless problem. I think we've made real strides in the last couple of years. It hasn't been perfect, but we are still doing more in Mon County than anywhere else in the state. And I want to applaud all the people all the nonprofits in Mon County that are really pulling together to help to deal with that issue. We also need to deal with the drug epidemic that's been masked by COVID. And of course, COVID is still with us. So we've got a lot of challenges, but as I've said before, we've got a lot of good challenges here in Mon County. And I think any county commissioner across the state would gladly change places with one of us to manage the good problems we've had rather than the problems they have that don't have any solutions. The last thing I want to say is a major challenge is we need to continue to working together in a collaborative manner. I feel like we've really made strides in the past 5 years with the commission working with all the municipalities, the Board of Education, state, and all of our local nonprofits in a collaborative manner. And we need to continue that progress and not devolve back into our individual silos. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And now, Mr. Hartzog, what do you consider to be the most significant challenges for Mon County over the next 10 years?
Well, that would be, well, you see, the question is for the next 10 years. You see, challenges often, well, there are some present and it will be for a while unless we do something about them. Well, the question is 10 years, over the next 10 years. we can't predict the future. I mean, something could show up as something as random as COVID. While it did, while many people were aware of it, not everybody was prepared for it. Well, while we do need to resolve certain problems, we also need to be prepared for them. That's another thing. Now how one prepares for something depends on the problem, really. I mean, Sean's right in many of things, the drugs, the homeless, but there's one thing I've noticed every time I walked into the county clerk's office. On top of everything he's mentioned, there's also the problem with back roads. Well, most of those highways are being dealt with currently. The back roads, not so much. And that's one thing that's being neglected at the moment. So and also he's mentioned stuff like well, I mean, this is going into infrastructure really, but it's still an issue that hasn't been dealt with, but needs to be dealt with. And I'm not saying it's all Sean's fault, because there's 3 commissioners in this county, but it's like he doesn't have. I don't know how else to put it at the moment. But there are things in this county that could be dealt with, but other things that we don't know that's coming. Well, that's about all I have to say, I guess.
Okay, thank you. And now question 2, and this one will go to you first, Mr. Hartzog. There's been some concern that the commission's work is not transparent. For example, its website includes meeting agendas, but no minutes. How should the commission make it easier for citizens to be involved and informed?
Well, I've noticed a lot of newspaper people come in, but I haven't seen a whole lot of internet broadcasts, and that seems like what everybody's transitioning to today. I've noticed there's a couple guys in the back of the room who's always recording a lot of things, but I've been, from what I understand, they're more of their websites are to people with a limited view of selection. Well, not everybody reads newspapers anymore, and I'd say we need more to widen the view. We need more internet on their side. And yeah, and maybe TV, although that's also a dying genre thanks to internet. Well, because it's not just the old voters we need to worry about, it's the young people too. I mean, we have potential voters here who just aren't exactly informed of what's going on, and we just need. And while I do see there's a need to expand that horizon, it's like there's not. Hold on, let me think here. Sorry, lost my train of thought at the moment. There's a number of ways we can make sure people are more informed, but I'd say we could focus it on the internet while also making sure the newspaper's there and all that. I mean, that's just one way to look at it. Well, and I've also noticed Sean seems more prepared for this. Not sure if I was given the questions, and if he was and I wasn't, but I don't know. Never mind. I'm done.
Okay, Mr. Sikora. How should the commission make it easier for citizens to be involved and informed?
Well, I would first start to answer that question as far as how Monongalia County Commission can be more transparent. And I would like to say that how could we be more transparent? We're one of the most transparent government entities in the whole state. But I do believe that you can always be more transparent, just like you can have more communication. We were the first in the state to put all of our finances online and working with the state auditor's office. Every penny is there and accessible. The minutes to our meeting, it was mentioned in the question, they are available through the clerk's office, and I believe they're online, though. But I'm a real stickler for staying in my lane, and I'm not passing the buck. But the clerk of the county commission, which is the county clerk, is responsible for minutes. So we don't tell them other constitutional offices how to run their offices. So they are available, and I do see where maybe the clerk could be asked to make them more readily available, but they're out there. Otherwise, any business that we conduct is public. Taped and available for the public. Also, anyone wanting to address the commission can do so weekly by coming to our meetings and addressing us in the public portion of our meetings. Lastly, we have a public portal where anybody can email us their concerns or questions, and those questions are provided us in real time. In addition, any of our direct email addresses are readily available to the public. Another way our citizens can become involved and informed is to one, like my friend Charles is doing, getting involved in the process, putting his hat in a ring to run for this office, or to put himself out there to be questioned, to answer questions and be part of the process. I applaud Mr. Hartzog's desire to get involved, but we also have ways that you can get involved without running for an office to kind of get you more informed as to how county government actually runs. We have plenty of boards and commissions. In our weekly meetings, we read off a laundry list of all the positions that are still available to support the commission for the boards and commissions that we support. Another way that we can be more transparent, and as I didn't really say it in our challenge question, is the issue of broadband. When we, and I say when, not if, when we connect every corner of this county, which we're currently in a project to do, we will be able to have people at all ends of the county more connected, more informed, and that's ultimately the Uber way that we can have people be more transparent, because everybody will have access, not just people that live in the central part of our county. Thank you.
Thank you. And question number 3, homelessness is certainly a challenging concern for Mon County. Please describe your approach to assisting our homeless population and include any specific strategies that you would like to see implemented. And Mr. Sikora, this one goes to you first.
Thank you. I do acknowledge that homelessness is a problem in our county, and the commission has been a willing partner in working with our community partners to effect real change in addressing this problem. Now, the commission does get criticized a lot for not being out as front as the city is in regarding this issue. But, I kind of look at it, again, being an MBA student, I look at everything like the Pareto principle, where, 20% of the issues create 80% of the problem. Well, homelessness is kind of that issue, but we can't turn our backs on the other 80% of the county. So we try to manage the county in a structured way where we're dealing with these issues, while at the same time we're also dealing with the other 80%. So I will tell you that I'm not a social worker, I don't have a medical background, and I'm not a psychologist. And I'd go out on a limb to say that none of the candidates are. My approach to most problems is to bring in the experts, let them devise a plan of attack, and then give them the tools and support to tackle the problem. And I think we've done that. We have done it in a number of ways. We are big proponents of the work that Milan Pushkar Health Right has done under the leadership of Laura Jones and her board. And this year and next year will mark record amounts of funding from the commission to that entity. We just finished our FY23 budget, and funding for nonprofits in these social service groups is up over 22% from last year, which was up 7% from the year before. I mentioned Laura, but I don't want to slight all the others who are doing good work for all of our citizens. I also want to give credit to Commissioner Bloom, who spends countless hours on social service problems. So the commission is engaged, and I'd beg to differ that we're engaged just as much as anybody else, and we're doing more to find constructive and reasonable and really proactive issues. One thing I like to say all the time, and I have this conversation with Commissioner Bloom all the time, because he's so involved in the food insecurity issues with our county. And I tell them, it's great, Tom. Everything you're doing is wonderful, and everything that people of our county is doing is wonderful. But you're addressing this. You're addressing the symptoms and not addressing the root cause. I like to look at more root cause issues. And we've done that when we've built the Community Food Innovation Center out at our extension building. And my philosophy with that whole building is, rather than giving people food, you teach them to cook, you teach them to grow, you teach them to all aspects of the food life cycle. And you'll do more to further food insecurity issues than just handing out food. So anyhow, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. And now, Mr. Hartzog, please describe what your approach would be to assisting our homeless population and include any specific strategies you would like to see implemented.
Well, we can't do what Chicago did in the 60s, which was built these nice what they did was they built these nice apartments, and those ended up going to waste because all these, and they were nice apartments with low rent, and they were specifically for the homeless. Well, it ended up not working because it was a major cost, and everybody just wound up going homeless again because the places they went into ended up being trashed. Well, here's the thing: as a man with high functioning autism, I've struggled with things like that all my life. Whereas I'm like level-minded on these things, and I've been told in the past I'm fairly intelligent, and while I definitely look like I'm like every other person, but what nobody else realizes is that I'm like the guys on the street, and nobody seems to understand, people like them, what they're going through. Everybody, and well, obviously I'm not, as Sean said, a psychologist or a doctor or anything, but I do understand what those guys are going through. Oftentimes, now there are things we can do, and things we can't do, and that's why, like in aviation, it's not a plan of attack; it's the angle of attack. You see, homeless is not something that can easily be resolved, but has to be done. But something we haven't really figured out yet. Like, for example, what we really need to do is get spread the awareness awareness is definitely a thing we should do. As far as actually helping them, getting them out of the gutter is still something I'm trying to figure out at the moment. But I do believe in the awareness to employers could definitely help those who are homeless, because that way they're more likely to hold on to a job.
Thank you, Mr. Hartzog.
Yeah.
Thank you. And question number 4, and I believe Mr. Hartzog starts this one. Walking is an essential mode of transportation for much of our county's population. How can we ensure that our county is pedestrian friendly?
Well, I for one am a pedestrian in many cases. I don't even have my license yet, and I can't quite afford a car. I did recently pass a permit test, and that's about it. However, walking is an essential part of my everyday thing. However, I've noticed that it's not pedestrians who have it in hard, especially on Beechhurst Avenue, especially with those wide sidewalks. It's what I'm really concerned about is the drivers and the bikers, because especially people on bikes. Like, I fear for my life when it comes to the laws associated with biking and how they can't be on the sidewalk but have to be on the road. Well, not everybody's going to care whether or not you're a biker. You're going too slow, and therefore they need to they're trying to weave around you. So, and I've actually seen a lot on the road by the mountain layer and all those campus classes where all the students go. Well, drivers aren't exactly like, unlike most college towns, drivers aren't exactly aggressive towards these students, or at least not that I've seen. So I don't think pedestrian is a problem, except where there's no sidewalk. Like where I live, up on right now I live at the Ridge Apartments, and there's just no sidewalk to get to my classes downtown. I could definitely do a sidewalk personally. I think a lot of these students down here could too. But overall, I don't think the safety of pedestrians is at the top of the priority for me, at least, especially since they're mostly safe for the time being.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sikora, how can we ensure that our county is pedestrian friendly?
I would like to add bike friendly to that question too. Again, this goes back to the discussion of infrastructure and trying to manage growth. The commissioners are a member of the MMMPO, and we, the MMPO, it's hard to say, I'm just going to say MPO, struggle constantly with getting our fair share of basic needs to move people from one place to another while taking pedestrian and bike considerations into account. A lot of times we're making real decisions that are based off of moving thousands of vehicles versus having accommodations for pedestrian and bicycles. I understand living without a vehicle in town. When I came here as a student, I lived for years without a vehicle and lived downtown, but worked in Evansdale. And we didn't have the mountain line transit system that we have today. But that was me, and that's my personal circumstances. And I'm not discounting that it is a real issue. A lot of this goes back to the same problem, not getting our fair share from Charleston. We really need to have our state representatives do more to represent our area. Not to be political, but when the majority of our local representatives are in the super minority, Charleston is not really inclined to listen to us. We just need to continue. We also need to continue to refuse to accept less. And we can address a lot of accessibility issues. In addition, we need to ensure that we allow more space to accommodate additional access as we are planning development in our county. I know that we have these discussions all the time in the MPO, and we need to continue our fight for funding so we can have universal access. And then another issue that we'll probably talk about, well, we will talk about a little later, is again, as I talk about making sure we have access as we're growing, we need to consider, that's why I'm a proponent of at least having the conversation about subdivision regulations so that we can build those things into future plans and plan for that growth.
Thank you. And who started that one? Mr. Hart.
Correct.
Mr. Hartzog started that one. Okay. How should the county commission work to improve services to people living outside the major population centers in the county? Please address the lack of grocery stores, safe and affordable housing, ease of access, etc. Okay,
I'm a pretty literal guy. I take everything literal, so I'm going to have to assume a few things when we are talking about services. If the questioner is talking about transportation, we have a great mutually beneficial relationship with Dave Bruffy and his Mountain Line organization. We're always working with him to address accessibility issues. So as a new development pops up in town or a new feature, we're constantly working, and Dave's been real accommodating to address those issues. For instance, when we did the Hazel's House of Hope up on Scott Avenue, they were very accommodating and working a new route so that we can make sure that we were getting people to and from that facility. In addition, by nature, outside major population centers means you're likely talking about the county or unincorporated parts of the county. Regardless, the county is a major partner with Granville and the developer to create the UTC, which is outside major population centers. We work closely with the developer on the Westridge development, so that really kind of addresses the stores that they had in their question. Safe and affordable housing is something that we all need to work on. But I would beg to differ. The housing is more safe and more affordable outside municipalities than it is in them. Harmony Grove will also open up another huge area for housing development that we need to develop in a thoughtful way. Access to recreational opportunities. The county has 3 parks that I would put up against any county parks in the state. And we've been an active partner in creating the aquatic and track center that it's at Milan Park, ensuring that there was access through mass transit to get there. In addition, this is the second time I'm talking about Commissioner Bloom, but it was Commissioner Bloom's idea that when the commission got involved in that project, that they would teach kids to swim by a certain grade level. This year, we just put that program in place. We're also working with the Westridge developer on exit 155, something no other county does for their DOH, and the improvements to Chaplain Hill. And when I say no other county does for DOH, our county, our developer is developing the exit. So sorry, see, my time's up.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Hartzog, how should the county commission work to improve services to people living outside the major population centers in the county?
Well, I'm at the moment, I'm safe and affordable housing. Well, like Mr. Sikora, I'm gonna have to assume a couple things. As far as lack of grocery stores, well, I'm gonna have to relate back to when I was listening on the what was it? The conservative the last meeting we were just listening into.
The
Sorry.
conservation district supervisors.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, because when it came to grocery stores, I'd have to agree with with the Mr. Andrew Price on his. I'd have to agree with him on the idea that we definitely don't have enough farmers. That's for sure. And how he planned to get around that was definitely something I'd support. And safe and affordable housing. Well, we can't do well. As far as affordable housing goes, it's something. Now, my grandfather has been in real estate for many years. And, well, he knows a lot about that. And, well, unfortunately, I guess I don't. You see, for the vast majority of my life, my parents have been renting. And, well, affordable housing is not something easy to come by. It's an area by area issue. And for our area, well, I think I got it off lucky, but I'm very well aware that other people haven't. As I've also noticed, we've had a lot of parking lots and apartments in the area, but not enough businesses to actually support those. Well, what we need is more businesses. And yeah, I see my time's up. Sorry.
Okay. And the next question. Given the recently announced suit against the city of Morgantown for gender discrimination and not addressing a hostile work environment, how should the county commission ensure that its departments are diverse and inclusive for all employees? Mr. Sikora, I think you start first this time.
Thank you. Well, anyone that paid attention to our budget presentation last Friday would know that this is something that the Mon County Commission takes seriously and is addressing when we talk about performing an HR audit as the first step of having a formal countywide HR department. Now, the average public may not understand that it's not a default that every entity has an HR department. The county clerk's office does all of our benefits administration and basically serves at that role, but they also have a lot of other responsibilities. As a contract to the federal government, our company is held to the highest and most current requirements for diversity and inclusion. So I would be first. And for the longest time, I was the only voice in the wilderness saying that the state is severely lacking in keeping up with the federal government. But just like anything else, it's another opportunity to lead, to ensure that our employees are treated equally and fairly, and we are seriously addressing compliance to everything from safety to security to diversity and inclusion. Challenge for the commission, we can't tell the other 5 elected offices how to run their departments. So we're going to have a long series of conversations and show them how this is a benefit to our county. This is just one step in my overall goal to fundamentally change how the county does business. Bringing an HR department in is one. My procurement expertise and now knowing how lacking the state system is another. These highlight the unique advantages that I have over any other candidates is that I manage companies in the private sector and have been responsible for these areas. But again, help is on the way. Good news. We are doing an audit of the county to see where we stand, and we are addressing these issues. And this isn't something where we're being proactive, being reactive. I've been saying this for a couple of years, and we've been talking about this, and we decided just this year that we're really going to move forward.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And Mr. Hartzog, how can the county commission ensure that its departments are diverse and inclusive for all employees?
Well, I'll tell you what. I have not heard I actually haven't heard of this recently suit, but I can tell anybody, and anybody who really knows me can assure you that I've always been a champion of equality in many examples. Well, I may be a Republican. That's mostly on an economic stance, and I also believe in equality based on raises based on merits, and of course. But when it comes down to it, I've always believed that men and women, and of all races, should be treated equally. Like I said, as far as making sure it's a less hostile work environment, well, reducing one's rights has its effects, but I don't believe in doing that. As far as reducing discrimination, well, to put it simply, I've got women in my I've got a large family tree, and the women are all over it, really. Basically, if I ever made a mistake as far as discrimination, I'd have every woman in my family tree, like aunts, grandmas, mothers, sisters, they would all line up and give me a piece of their mind for hours. Some of them will grab a switch. They don't care because they don't care how old I am. So yeah, I don't believe that the discrimination should be there, but it's definitely an issue, and well, not sure what to do, and I'm sure there's something that can be done about it. I see my time's up.
Thank you, Mr. Hartzog. And this is the next to the last question. And Mr. Sikora, you start with this one. Please explain why you would or would not support countywide zoning.
Well, I'd like to say that overall, I don't support countywide zoning. I live in a city and zoning has its place, but there's instances where it takes on a life of its own and becomes overly bureaucratic. And my personal experience is that I've had a lot of bad issues with zoning and basically the permitting process, because just about 8 years ago, I went through the process of tearing down the house that I lived in for 17 years and then rebuilding. And the permitting process of that was very, very difficult. My builder, it was the first time he built a house in the city, and he said he'd never do it again. Now, that was at the beginning of the process. Now, once he got into it and he's building and there was the inspection process with building enforcement, he said that was a wonderful experience and it was all well. And he was actually happy to find out that he was building houses as they should be built. Now, I do support subdivision regulation and land use ordinances, but I don't have blind allegiance to ramming something through without making sure that it's something that the county, developers, the public can all agree to, and sit down and just have some common sense regulations that really kind of inform how we do development. Because we're a county that has those problems with growing too fast. And I really think that we need to address that. We've done that a little bit with our Orphan Road program, where we're dealing with longstanding issues that were part of the result of bad development. But we also want to be proactive and develop something that moves forward and it also addresses these issues with access and all those other things.
Thank you. And Mr. Hartzog, please explain why you would or would not support county-wide zoning.
Can you, sorry, you glitched out there for a second. I'm trying to make sure you're still with me.
We're still hearing you.
Okay.
Please explain why you would or would not support county-wide zoning.
Well, I'm gonna have to agree with Sikora on many of those things, how it makes things harder on people. I mean, however, it especially makes it hard on not only residents, but it also makes it hard on businesses. For example, when my parents decided to start up a lawn care company, they needed to have their home rezoned to be considered a business location because, well, our house at the time when I was in Alabama, we had a lawn care business, and then the crash of 2008 hit. But overall, that's not really relevant to the situation. What's relevant is that my parents tried to get a permit, and they had a hard time with that. And while county-wide zoning is, I have to agree, is a bad thing, and it should be it's more locally than county, really. But for example, in a historic district, it's probably a good idea, maybe. But when it comes down to it, I mean, I could be wrong, but maybe. And if it's gerrymandering, I don't think that's what you're talking about. But I consider that a form of zoning, and yes, that is. I'd also say that's not really something I'm in favor of, because it gives one party the advantage over the other, really. So yeah.
Thank you. Whoops.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, you're fine. So yeah, on top of everything Sean said, it's obviously makes it harder for a lot of people, both residences and businesses. So yeah, I'm done.
Thank you. And this is our last question for the evening until we see if there are any questions from the audience. And Mr. Hartzog, you can take this one first. In the most recent analysis in 2020, the American Society of Civil Engineers gave West Virginia's roads and bridges a D+ grade and drinking water, wastewater, and dams a D grade. How should Mon County plan to pay for essential services and infrastructure needs when it has been lowering property taxes every year since 2017?
Well,
and go ahead. Okay. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Well, I'll tell you what. My stepdad is a civil engineer for not Mon County, but Wood County and the surrounding areas in Parkersburg. And I'll tell you what. Well, I do believe what he mostly deals with is guardrails on, really, whenever there's not a project going on. honestly, I don't really know much of what he does, but but I do believe if they gave us a D+ grade and a D grade, well, we're obviously not the federal government, so we can't give out tariffs, but we can't, especially since tariffs would probably be a bad idea in the first place, since we're a landlocked state. Well, however, as far as taxes go, we may have been lowering property taxes. And I'm not sure if we have an income tax. But as far as everything else goes, I just say maybe we should well, at the moment I'm not quite sure what we'll do about the money. But if we maybe we could tax in different types of properties, really. That's what I'd say we could do. Like whether it's like plots of land would obviously be lower. Businesses would be slightly higher, maybe, because they get more money, typically speaking. As far as residences, well, that would depend on that, really, the size or maybe the type of house, really. Yeah, I'd say that's, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And now, Mr. Sikora, how should Mon County plan to pay for essential services and infrastructure needs when it has been lowering property taxes every year since 2017?
Well, not to be critical of the question, but it's phrased as being more responsible and accountable to the public is a bad thing. And I certainly will never apologize for being more responsible and more accountable to the people that elected me to this position. It also probably should have been better sourced, as the county real and property taxes have nothing to do with the infrastructure funding, which comes directly from the state. That's like yelling at the cable guy because my power is out. But both take money from you to provide a service, but one doesn't have anything to do with the other. But I would like to go, so I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding of how the county, and Mon County specifically, does its budgeting. We set out and we have all these conversations with all the elected leaders. We have a grant process where we have all these nonprofits come to us and ask us for money. And we go through a laborious 2-3 week period where we're really defining what we need. We don't think of this in terms of what do we get and how can we spend it. So it's just a fundamental change in philosophy that we've been doing budgeting for the past 5 or 6 years. So, and I asked the public, why isn't anybody else doing this? We're looking at things and really trying to hold ourselves accountable to what we actually need. So what that does is it pushes down on every single office to work more efficiently. And we're actually doing more with less. You know, when I talk about having an HR department, we're doing that with less. We just gave raises. We just instilled a pay scale with the sheriff's office, which will allow him to make fundamental changes for the next 30 years to his department with less. We are able to give raises with less. We're just being more accountable to the dollars. And again, saving those dollars wouldn't change anything in regards to roads or infrastructure.
Thank you. Sarah, do we have any questions from the public?
I'm checking. I only see one. Welcome to post more. But the question from Susan Riddle, why do the candidates think they are better than the other to serve as Mon County Commissioner? Similar to our last question. From the previous one, I mean.
Mr. Hartzog, why don't you go ahead?
Well, this is a question I've actually been waiting for. To put it simply, I don't think Sean's a bad guy. And I don't think he's, well, I just don't think he's going about it the right way. And while he's obviously had the upper hand as far as speaking, he obviously sounded more professional. But I don't think that should stray from the fact that some people may have good ideas and some people may have bad ideas. Well, I don't think, as far as, well, all that goes, I just don't think Sean, obviously Sean's not a bad guy. It's what I'm really going in for is to, you see, what I really don't believe in is career politics. Like Bob Beach, who obviously wasn't showing up today. Well, if he ain't able to show up, then why is he running? That's one thing I'm wondering. He did accept, right? Never mind, don't answer that. However, well, I just don't think Sean's obviously more experienced at this than I am. Obviously, I'm not much of a speaker. But that shouldn't really stray from the fact that some people, however unprepared they might be for a speech, may or may not be as more intelligent than they seem. I, for one, know that and everybody who knows me knows that I'm more intelligent than how I've been talking here tonight. It's just, the anxiety that's associated with this, but I just don't think Sean's a bad guy. I don't think he's a bad guy, but I don't think he's going about it right. As far as Bob goes, I'm not sure what to think about him. I actually haven't met him yet, so I'm not really going to judge till I meet him.
Thank you. And the same question to Mr. Sikora.
Thank you for your comments, Charles. I likewise don't think you're a bad guy. I really applaud your efforts, and really, again, it takes a lot of courage to come and put yourself in front of the public. And Commissioner Hawkins used to say all the time, boy, how you change. He used to say, I'd never say a word. So it's just something you get used to as you're in front of the public. I used to, think that I was a horrible public speaker, and I still do. Luckily, I have my wife who really sharpens my edges and really works with me on my public speaking, but it's just something that just comes with the territory. I do think I'm the best candidate for this position. I am not a career politician. When I ran for this position in 2016, it was the first thing I ever ran for. I do have my undergrad is in political science, and I'm a political junkie, so I've always been interested in serving, but I've served in other areas, on nonprofits, and, that I've done in addition to my work. I have this saying that if you're not willing to do something about it, you can't complain. It's gotten me into trouble a lot of times in my life. I'm an avid sports participant in Bow Park. I'm an avid softball player, and I still play in the senior league in Morgantown. One year, and we had a corporate cup challenge. My company got into it, and we played softball, and they didn't have adequate referees. So I complained about it, and they asked me, well, why don't you referee next year? And I ended up doing that. And 14 years later, I was still running the corporate cup challenge. So I've always had a calling to serve. I want to serve. I've 6 years where I've been very successful. I have a few things that I'd like to finish, a few major projects that I like to finish. And that's why I'd like another turn. And I do think that I'm more qualified than any of the three candidates that are in this race.
Thank you.
Not to interrupt you, Sean, but I just want to say the career politician thing wasn't really aimed at you.
That's okay, Charles.
Are there any other questions from the public, Sarah?
There's one more from Judy Ball. This one's for Mr. Sikora. On the property tax question, are you suggesting that Mon County is meeting the needs of its citizens?
I'm suggesting that Mon County is meeting the needs of the essential services that the county provides better than any county in the state, when we're doing more for less. And I'd beg to differ that any county that is involved in their county as the Monongalia County Commission. Monongalia County Commission is probably the hardest commission position to serve in all of West Virginia, because we have to deal with all the development that's going on, try to manage the growth. We have to manage the infrastructure, and we're not getting our fair share from the state. And we have a lot of issues because we're such a giving community. It brings a lot of the issues to our community. So we have a lot to deal with, but I think we're dealing with it better than any other commission in the state.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
I'm sorry, we do have one more question for both candidates. Brian Butcher asks, this may have already been asked, but what benefits and vision do you see going forward with the municipal broadband plan? And follow up to that is, which of the routes presented by Ice Miller Whiteboard seems the best?
Want me to answer first, or?
You're the one who's the broadband guy, so.
Well, thank you, Charles. This is something that it is a pet project of mine. I started on this about 5 years, about 4.5 years ago, working with the Region 6 Council. They had hired someone to come in and do a plan, and they did a plan for the whole region of, I believe it's a 13 county region. And first thing I asked is, where's the plan? Okay, so how do I execute this? I'm all about having a plan and executing. And what I found out was the plan wasn't done properly. It used outdated FCC data that you couldn't be relied on. It just used old census tract information. So one of the things that the first thing we had to do was get a reliable partner in here that can help us move forward. So we did a very extensive procurement, very professional, and we ended up with the consultant that we ended up with because they met all the needs that we wanted. We wanted someone who's going to come in, soup to nuts, look at the whole county, not rely on old data, create their own data. We did a survey that went out to all the county, We got enough statistically significant responses to be able to make decisions. And then we engineered a plan. Right now, we have a plan for 14 rings across the whole county. We're in the implementation stage right now to decide which one we're going to tackle first. And it's a very complex question because we're dealing with funding. Certain areas have revenue requirements. So we have to figure out, okay, so what areas can we get done and do by grants? What areas can we do by our ARPA dollars? What areas can we use, do a P3 and have private investment? What areas do we need to issue bonds? So we're looking at that. We're right at the point where we're trying to address. The consensus is that we're going to address the weakest area of the county first, which is the western end. So we do have plans to do a pilot in the western end and the eastern end at the same time, but we're working through those details. We also have some good ideas about working with other counties so that would help. In the eastern end, we can work with Preston County and help them serve some of our citizens. In the western end, we can work with Marion County and help us serve some of their citizens. At the northern border, we're working with Greene County to have them help serve some of our citizens. So we're not just looking at a one-size-fits-all solution. We've developed the plan, and now we're really getting into the weeds as far as execution. And we hope to be moving dirt this summer. But again, I know I see my time's up, but I wanted to answer the question fully. There's just a lot going on, a lot of decisions we need to make, but we're doing it in a very measured and thoughtful way. And I think it's really going to create dividends, and that's infrastructure, that's economic development, that's connectivity. It's very important for our citizens. I mean, I think COVID really highlighted it. It's really been a blessing. I say that it's been a blessing because it's really forced the need for broadband and really forced the money. So now we have unprecedented opportunities, and we can't waste those opportunities with not spending the money that we have in the most thoughtful and economically advantageous ways possible.
Thank you. Do we have any additional questions?
There is one more from Susan Riddle. What infrastructure is most important to the future growth of Mon County?
Should I answer?
I was going to ask if you would like to go first.
Well, certainly not real estate. We got plenty of that. That's as far as what I'm aware of. As far as infrastructure, I'd say roads are definitely been a major complaint, but maybe, well, what I'm thinking of is instead of giving, well, most people for many years now have been just repaving old roads. Why not try a new recipe for asphalt? Well, engineers have come up with all sorts of roads for millennia, and I don't see why we can't use one of those. I'm sure this one's cheap, but it's obviously a lot of people, but it's obviously unpopular. Well, and seeing how as far as, and Mr. Sikora has mentioned before that we've done a lot for the state and haven't done a whole lot, and they haven't done a whole lot for us in return. I'd say part of that reason is because we're about 24 or maybe 25% of the state's base tax is this county alone. And since Bob Beach was, I'd just say between me and Sikora are probably the better of the two candidates. But still, as far as infrastructure, it's definitely the roads as far as in the immediate need. Water is not as bad as the southern West Virginia as it is in the north. While it is evidently a problem still, yes, but it's not as bad as it is in the south. I'm just gonna stop here so Sean can have a turn.
Thank you, Charles. I think hands down, everybody would admit that infrastructure, our roads are most important, and we really got to get ahead of the curve. We've been so long being reactive to growth. We've got to be proactive where we're planning and ahead of the curve as far as where growth is occurring in our county. I mean, it's a good byproduct of the growth we have and the people that want to be here and just the opportunities that we have. But we got to figure out a way to make sure that we're getting our fair share. And as I mentioned, we just have to keep. I mean, I know we're like a broken record, telling Charleston that they need to pay attention, but we need to be sending people down there that are going to band together and work with us to make sure that we are heard and not stop until we are heard. Right. Second, broadband is it's the new utility. I mean, we have to make sure we can't miss this opportunity to connect all of our citizens. Mon County was the home of the West Virginia's first cohort of the Ascend program. We had people that were moving here from all areas of the country. And, just the thought of being able to do work from wherever you want to work, but to live in the beauty of our county, of our state, coming here. And it's been a struggle to make sure that they're connected. I mean, honestly, we had one of the cohorts live next to one of the members of our broadband initiative and, had to help him get connected and do all the things that he had to do just to keep connectivity. So roads, obviously, but we really need to make sure that we don't miss this opportunity to connect every corner of our county with broadband, because really the infrastructure, the economy of the future is just in being connected, in education and connecting all of our schools and giving all of our kids the equal opportunity to learn and have access to information so that they can learn.
Thank you. And now it's time for closing statements. Each of our two candidates can have 2 minutes to wrap up. And Mr. Hartzog, would you like to start?
Well, actually, I'd like to let Sean go first if possible.
All right.
Thank you, Charles. I remind myself every day of the tremendous faith that the people of this county has put in me when they elected me to be a Monongalia County Commissioner in 2016. I never take that faith lightly. Since that time, I've focused on being a true public servant, not simply another politician who is focused on personal and political party interests first. Our citizens deserve true representation, especially during these unprecedented times. All citizens should expect the same from all of their elected representatives. As your commissioner, I've spent every day of the last 5 years endeavoring to be a true public servant and to never act out of personal ambition. I've increased financial accountability and transparency by working with the state auditor's office to make Mon County the first participant in the West Virginia checkbook program, where all of our finances are made available. I ensure that the commission focus solely on the interests of our citizens rather than individual and self-interest. And I strive to repair the relationships to our local government so that our local governments work better together. My goal when elected to this position was to fundamentally change the way Mon County operates. 5 years later, Monongalia County Commission is a model to be emulated as the most responsive, proactive, and successful government body in West Virginia. We've accomplished so much, but I still have a lot of projects that I'd like to see through to fruition. When you consider my service, I hope my efforts to work towards real solutions rather than play politics is undeniable. And I ask for your support and your vote so that we continue moving Monongalia County forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now Mr. Hartzog.
All right. Well, I know I haven't been the most, vocal here today, and obviously I sound very unprepared and very unprofessional about what I'm doing. So what? I'm 19. Can you blame me for not having experience in this? However, it's the lack, however unexperienced I am, I do believe in and being a patriot to this country. I've never not said the Pledge of Allegiance. I've never.
Have we lost you, Mr. Hartzog?
Hello?
Ah, we lost you there
hear
for
me?
a second. Mr. Hartzog, are you still with us?
Hello?
Are you with us again?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yep.
Okay, sorry. What part did I get cut off at?
Why don't you start over and tell us why you think you would be good for the county commission?
Well, obviously I haven't been the most vocal here, and I assure you, I don't think Sean has done too bad either. Well, I don't think he's going about it right way, but just don't believe I believe he's a good man, and obviously his intents are honorable. However, however, there's a vast majority of politicians out there who haven't done nothing. Or maybe not a vast majority, but there's a lot of politicians out there. Ultimately, what I'm trying to say is, I'd rather live in a country that's free from danger and in many cases than let it go to rot under these corrupt politicians. I can think of many cases in history where corrupt politicians were the ruin of a country. I mean, it happened with the Koreans when the samurai invaded in the 1500s. Happened with Julius Caesar. And while and whether or not ambition is actually within Sikora, I just don't think there's a whole lot of politicians out there who haven't been caught in that net at one point or another. What I'm trying to say is I'd like to live in a country where I'd like to preserve this country, really, what I'm trying to say. And what better way to start to preserve it than to start with at the local level? Because if society at the most basic, at the smallest level cannot function, then society as a whole cannot function. I see my time's up.
All right. Thank you very much for participating, both of you. It's been very interesting. Don't want to remind everybody, don't forget to vote. You can find more information at vote411.org. That's the League of Women Voters website. And you'll be able to find tonight's recording at lwvmorgantown.org/YouTube. And it will also be on Facebook.
Didn't you guys have trouble getting this on Facebook at the beginning?
I think we managed though. Thank you though. And just a reminder that we have early voting, April 27th to May 7th, and Election Day is May 10th. We would like to thank both Mr. Sikora and Mr. Hartzog for participating with us tonight, and we wish everybody a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Charles.